We are learning about many electron atoms. Today we are going to learn how to write their wave functions using a particular form. We learn how to write their wave functions as what are called Slater determinants, which looks sort of like this. But before that, let us recapitulate very quickly what we have studied in the earlier modules. We have learned that the way you write the Hamiltonian for many electron atom is that first of all you separate out the term for the kinetic energy of the nucleus or the center of mass. What you are left with is sum of n number of kinetic energy terms, one for each electron, sum of n number of nucleus electron, proton electron you can say attraction terms, minus qn e square sum over I to n 1 by Ri, and you have this problematic plus q e square, it is a double summation 1 by Rij terms. So, these turn out to be the 1 electron Hamiltonians, these ones, that is not a problem, but what you are left with is this electron repulsion term, which we have established that we cannot ignore. So, what we do is that we incorporate this electron repulsion term into the shielding constant, and we work with not the actual nuclear charge, but the effective nuclear charge, and that is how we write these 1 electron wave functions by replacing the actual nuclear charge by effective nuclear charge. And for helium atom, for example, the Hamiltonian is going to be a sum of 4 terms. Then I have shown the terms due to each electron in a different color, and the wave function would also be a product of 2 wave functions, one in electron 1, one in electron 2. And to start with, we work within the ambit of orbital approximation, which says that the orbitals here are essentially the the wave functions here are essentially atomic orbitals. In case of helium, these are 1s orbitals. We are now familiar with the form of 1s orbitals, only radius dependent part, no theta phi dependence, and here once again the only change from the hydrogen atom system, hydrogen atom scenario, is that you write Z effective instead of actual Z. So, this is how we have formulated the Hamiltonian, this is how we have written the wave function. And then we did a quick fact check, and we saw that for helium atom when we work with Z effective, actually we have not told you how we get this sigma, but there are ways. I think most of you would know of the empirical rules by which one can determine the value of sigma for different kinds of electrons in an atom, and using this we showed you that you get a theoretical value of energy which is close to the actual experimental value that is there. And the point to note is that the theoretical value is more positive than the experimental value, which is the real value. Okay. We are going to have more to say about this in the future modules. Next, we came to this very important concept of spin. I sort of rushed through this part, and once again I am going to rush through this part today, but I hope this is something familiar to us. We know very well that there is something called a spin quantum number. The only confusion that is usually there is that in many books it is written for electrons s equal to plus minus half. No, please remember, for electrons the spin quantum number s is half, and ms is the spin magnetic quantum number that can take up values of plus half and minus half. So, z component of angular momentum can be plus minus h cross by 2, and the length of this arrow or the magnitude of the spin angular momentum as such is equal to h cross multiplied by square root of s into s plus 1. Alright. So, we have actually learned about angular momentum, and we know very well why is it that the magnetic quantum number cannot take up, sorry about this, it is not MOM, recapitulation, spin angular momentum. Unfortunately some kind of reformatting has taken place, please do not worry about it. Okay. So, we have studied angular momentum, and we know that the magnetic angular momentum has an upper cap. Let us do a small calculation now, which we sort of started, but we did not complete. in one of the earlier modules. What I want to say is this, that this length here, as we said, is root over 3 by 2, is not it? Why? Because S is equal to half into 3 by 2, that is 3 by 4 under root sign, root 3 is divided by, well, 4 comes out of the root sign and you get 2 in the denominator. Of course, if you want, I can write root 3 h cross by 2. The reason why I did not write it is that in quantum mechanics often you write quantities in terms of h cross is like the unit. Okay. And here it is shown here that the z component is equal to h cross by 2, right. So, if we take say this angle, theta, what is cos theta? Cos theta is equal to h cross by 2 divided by root 3 h cross by 2, you are left with 1 by root 3. Is that right? 1 by root 3. Do you remember where we encountered this 1 by root 3 earlier? What this essentially means is, if you take square on the both sides, you get 3 cos square theta minus 1 equal to 0. So, you see this cos theta, well, theta is again the same magic angle that we get. Okay. So, this is the value of theta. What is the value of phi? We do not know, cannot say. Okay. That is why usually it is written like this. This tip of the arrow is usually shown to define the edge of a cone, and in the classical picture, interestingly, for spin one can actually get away using a nice classical vector picture, and it works. Okay. So, sometimes people get confused, that is a problem. The name spin itself is very confusing, because you might get the idea that the electron is spinning about its own axis, pretty much like the spinning motion of the earth, which is there in addition to its revolution around the sun. Now, the thing is this, spin quantum number or spin angular momentum, they do not arise from actual spinning motion of electron. If you work out the energies associated, you will find out that the electron has to actually spin at velocities greater than light if this angular momentum has to arise from a really circular motion of some sort. Okay. So, that does not that is not realistic. So, let me just tell you that spin arises out of relativistic treatment of electron. Okay. Spin is a product of relativistic quantum mechanics, which we are not going to study in this course. Okay. Interestingly, the spinning is in terms of some kind of an imaginary coordinate omega, but you can have its component in real space. So, it is a rather intriguing quantity. It is highly possible that we do not exactly understand what is going on here, but the mathematics is not impossible to understand, and also it is manifested in experiments. As I told you earlier, experimental results are the only truth, as Max Planck had said. So, this spin, what we will do is we are going to just deal with this spin angular quantum number in the way that we are talking about right now. Okay. So, what we have said is spin is associated with some kind of an angular momentum. We know the magnitude, we know the direction also, and we have also understood that phi is undefined. Phi is completely undefined. So, this tip of the arrow could be actually anywhere if you are talking about one spin. So, since for electron ms can take up values of plus half and minus half, your z component can be h cross by 2 or minus h cross by 2, that determines whether the angular momentum, spin angular momentum is pointing up or pointing down. These are called spin up or spin down states. Spin up state is assigned a wave function alpha, spin down is assigned a wave function beta. Right now, let us not worry about what the actual functional form of alpha and beta is. It suffices our purpose if we just think that the wave function for up spin is alpha, wave function for down spin is beta, but remember these are wave functions, spin wave functions, that is all, right. Now, let us go ahead. So, what we said is now if you want to talk about multi electron atoms, it is not sufficient to talk about N, L and M, you also have to talk about ms, not s, remember ms. For all electrons s is half anyway. So, this total wave function psi, which is a function of r theta phi and omega, the spin coordinate, is given by psi r theta phi, the wave function in spatial coordinates, multiplied by the wave function in spin coordinates alpha or beta. So, if you just take one electron, okay, then it can reside in the same orbital in two ways, one in which it has up spin, one in which it has down spins. So, two wave functions are now possible when you incorporate spin. Now, this state is called a doublet state. Why doublet? Because there are actually two wave functions when you consider the spin part as well. Okay. Now, let us make things a little interesting. Let us talk about 2 electron systems. Remember, that is what we want to do anyway, not only 2, we want to talk about maybe 5 electron, 6 electron, 10, 12 electron systems. To start with, let us understand how to go about it by considering a 2 electron system. So, here we are using electron labels of 1 and 2. So, 1 and 2 are like the names of the electron, electron number 1, electron number 2. So, as you understand, we can construct 4 different spin wave functions using electron numbers 1 and 2. And at this stage, in case you do not have a pen and notebook, please pause the video, go and fetch them and start writing, right. As I said earlier, we have to keep writing so that we understand. Okay. So, what are the 4 spin functions that we can think of? First of all, both electron numbers 1 and 2 can have up spin. So, that is written as alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha then 1 in brackets, then alpha 2 in brackets. This means electron number 1 has alpha spin, electron number 2 also has alpha spin, alpha 1, alpha 2. Similarly, both can have beta spins, that wave function will be beta 1, beta 2, no problem so far. Things get interesting when we think of mixed spin systems. What happens when one spin is alpha, one spin is beta? We might think of writing like this, alpha 1, beta 2, okay, or we might think of writing like this, beta 1, alpha 2. Now, if you look at these terms, what does this first wave function say? The first wave function says electron number 1 has up spin, electron number 2 has down spin. This one says electron number 1 has down spin, electron number 2 has up spin. Do you get the point? Do you get the point? If not, let us just say it once again. What it says here, this alpha 1 beta 2, is that it is electron number 1 and not electron number 2 that has alpha spin. It also says it is electron number 2 and not electron number 1 that has beta spin. Similarly, in this function we say that it is electron number 1 and not electron number 2 that has beta spin, and electron number 2 and not electron number 1 that has alpha spin. Now, we encounter a problem. What is the problem? If we say alpha 1 beta 2 and imply it is 1 and not 2 electron, I mean electron number 1 and not electron number 2 that has alpha spin, then what we are saying essentially is that we can differentiate between electron numbers 1 and 2. Can we really do that? Yeah, actually we cannot. So, if we are going there, alpha 1 alpha 2 is fine, beta 1 beta 2 is fine. Problem is 1 and 2 are indistinguishable. Electrons do not wear jerseys with their names or numbers written on them. Electrons do not have the numbers imprinted on them. We are designating them 1 and 2 to formulate the problem, but actually the 2 electrons are absolutely indistinguishable. You cannot say that it is electron number 1 and electron number 2 or electron number 2 and electron number 1 that has a particular spin state. What you can say is one of the electrons has alpha spin and one of the electrons has beta spin. That much is okay. Okay? But you cannot say that it is this and that, or this and not that, or that and not this that has alpha spin or beta spin. I hope I am able to make the point. Yeah. So, I have say 2 2 boys in a room and there is an apple, okay. And then after a while I come back and I see that the apple is not there, somebody has eaten it. Without asking them, shall I be able to say that well, this is a bad example because they could have shared the apple. Let us say they cannot, let us say that it is an apple that cannot be shared. Then I cannot say that it is boy A and not boy B who has eaten the apple. I cannot say the other way around. What I can say is that one of them has eaten it, provided the apple has not been shared. That is another problematic situation, fortunately, which is not relevant to our discussion. So, what we do is we write the wave function like this. Since we cannot figure out which is which, we take a linear combination. When we take a linear combination, we end up getting 2 functions, one with a plus sign between these two and one with minus sign, and we have to normalize. So, we multiply by 1 by root 2. Now if I look at this, what does it say? The first term says that it is electron number 1 and not number 2 that has alpha spin, and electron number 2 and not number 1 that has beta spin. The second one says exactly the opposite. It says electron number 1 has beta spin, electron number 2 has alpha spin. So, if I combine the two, remember probability, what is the probability of simultaneous occurrence? A product. What is the probability of either this or that happening? Sum. Yeah. I can probability of raining is half, probability of not raining is half. So, it cannot rain and not rain. If it could, then the probability of that would have been 1/4, but the total probability that it might rain, might not rain, that is half plus half equal to 1. Once again I am thinking of very bad examples today. Anyway, so what is the significance of this plus and minus? At this point nothing. Significance is there, profound significance is there, we will come to that. But at this point we are just combining the two terms using plus or minus, the two terms which say that one of the electrons has alpha spin and the other one has beta spin. Okay. I can say that using plus or minus, there is no reason at least now to discard one in favor of the other. So, we write both. So, what have we learned? We have learned that if both the spins are up or both the spins are down, then you can happily write alpha 1 alpha 2 or beta 1 beta 2. If one is up spin, one is down spin, then we must necessarily write two terms. In the first one, electron number 1 should have alpha spin, electron number 2 should have beta spin. In the second one it should be other way around, and then we connect them using either plus or minus sign. Okay. So, we take these two linear combinations. Now, to develop the discussion of why these linear combinations are important at all, we will bring in the concept of symmetry. What is the meaning of symmetry? Let us say I have an exchange operator. Exchange operator means an operator by which the labels are interchanged. When you apply exchange operator to psi 1 2, then it can become either plus psi 2 1 or minus psi 2 1, okay, something like that. Not all wave functions will be like that, but we are going to work only with wave functions that are either symmetric. Symmetric means eigenfunction of 1, the sign is plus, or antisymmetric. Antisymmetric means eigenfunction of minus 1, we have minus sign here. So, we are going to work only with wave functions that are either symmetric or antisymmetric with respect to exchange. Exchange means exchanging the labels, okay. Whatever is in 1 becomes in terms of 2, whatever is in terms of 2 becomes in terms of 1, that is all. What about the first one? Is it symmetric or is it antisymmetric with respect to exchange? And here how I wish there was a chat window where you people could respond. Unfortunately, we do not, but please think first. The first one, the first linear combination that we have shown, upon applying exchange operator, does it change sign, does it not change sign? Obviously it does not change sign. So, it is symmetric with respect to exchange. What about the second one? If you exchange the labels 1 and 2, then what do you get? Simply exchange the labels, you get, of course you get 1 by root 2, let us not worry about that. Then you get alpha 2 beta 1 minus beta 2 alpha 1. Wait. Minus this is beta 2 alpha 1. What have I done? I have just interchanged 1 and 2. So, what do I get here? I get 1 by root 2. Let us take this second term first and write in the same sequence as far as possible. Beta 2 alpha 1 is the same as alpha 1 beta 2 minus, but wait, there is a minus sign in front of this. So, I had better take this minus sign out, minus 1 by root 2 alpha 1 beta 2. Now, I can write another minus because this is plus sign, minus and minus is plus, minus I will write it as beta 1 alpha 2. Okay. So, what is that? You recognize it? If this is psi, then this is minus psi, is not it? So, after erasing, so what we see is that upon applying the exchange operator, the second wave function changes sign. So, the second wave function must be antisymmetric with respect to exchange. So, what we see here is that the wave functions that we generate by taking linear combinations are either symmetric or antisymmetric with respect to exchange. Why would we bother about that? We bother about that because there is something called sixth postulate of quantum mechanics, and I will just read it for you because it is important to understand this. It says the complete wave function of a system of identical fermions, fermion is what is fermion? Spin half or integral multiple of half, that is what the spin number is, right. So, fermions like electrons must be antisymmetric with respect to interchange of all their coordinates, spatial and spin of any two particles. I read that again. For identical fermions, the complete wave function must be antisymmetric with respect to interchange of all their coordinates of any two particles, which means that if I just interchange 1 and 2, then psi should become minus psi. That is all it means, right. That is, this is true for fermions. For bosons it is not the case. For bosons they are actually symmetric, the wave functions are symmetric with respect to interchange. So, now let us try to write the helium atom wave function, knowing very well that the complete wave function has to be antisymmetric with respect to exchange of the coordinates. First of all, let us start with this psi 1 s 1, psi 1 s 2. We encountered this in the previous slide, I hope you remember. Yeah, this means both the electrons are in the 1s orbital. Then what will the corresponding spin part be? To say that, first tell me, well, tell yourself, is this psi s1 psi s2 symmetric or antisymmetric with respect to exchange? That is a very easy question, because just take 1 here, take 2 here, psi 1 s1 psi 1 s2 becomes psi 1 s2 psi 1 s1, and these are functions, these are not operators. So, the sequence of multiplication does not matter, right, they are commutative. So, what we get then is helium atom wave function given by psi s1 multiplied by psi s2 is symmetric with respect to exchange. Now, let us go back to the sixth postulate. This is also called, by the way, Pauli principle. Ring a bell? Remember something? Well, it does not say Pauli exclusion principle. I did not say Pauli exclusion principle. I said Pauli principle. Pauli principle is that for fermions the total wave function including the spin part has to be antisymmetric with respect to exchange. As we will see, our familiar Pauli exclusion principle is going to follow from here. Okay. But until now what we have stated, the sixth postulate, it is really Pauli principle. Okay. So, now, so this is symmetric. So, if the total wave function has to be antisymmetric, then I must multiply this by an antisymmetric spin part. Remember, there were 2 spin parts that were there, well, 2 kinds of spin parts, alpha 1, alpha 2, symmetric or antisymmetric? Symmetric. So, if I just write say alpha 1, alpha 2, then what is the problem? The problem is this is symmetric with respect to exchange, this here is symmetric with respect to exchange. So, the product is also symmetric, but then we have just learned that for identical fermions the complete wave function must be antisymmetric with respect to exchange. So, this is not an acceptable wave function. The moment you bring in the spin part, some of the spatial wave functions are not going to be allowed anymore. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let us just go ahead. So, now what we have then is we multiplied by the antisymmetric combination. Remember, there were 4 spin wave functions, alpha alpha which is symmetric, beta beta which is symmetric, alpha beta plus beta alpha which is symmetric. The only antisymmetric spin wave function in our hand is 1 by root 2 multiplied by alpha 1 beta 2 minus beta 1 alpha 2. So, what we are saying is that only this antisymmetric spin part can be multiplied with this symmetric spatial part to give us an acceptable total wave function. Okay. So, this is this only spin part that is going to work. All other spin wave functions are not compatible, you can say, with psi 1 s1 multiplied by psi 1 s2, because we need an antisymmetric total wave function. Alright. Shall we go ahead? Let us. Now see, what happens if the 2 electrons in 1s orbital has same spin. So, what we imply by saying this is that at the moment we say that alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2, these are not going to exist, it automatically says that 2 electrons in 1s orbital must not have the same ms numbers, not the same spin if I say loosely. Okay. And that essentially is your Pauli exclusion principle, that in an atom for an electron all 4 quantum numbers cannot be the same. Okay. If n, l, m are the same, at least ms should be different. Okay. So, now we are asking the question, what happens if 2 electrons in 1s orbital has the same spin. So, it is like this, alpha 1 alpha 2 multiplied by psi h e is equal to psi 1 s 1 multiplied by psi 1 s 2. So, see, this is symmetric with respect to exchange, is not it? So, since it is symmetric, it does not stand the test of your 6th postulate of quantum mechanics. So, it cannot be taken. It turns out that upon applying the exchange operator, you get back the same psi 1 2 psi 2 1 wave function, right, no change in sign. So, this is not allowed by the 6th postulate of quantum mechanics. The only thing that is allowed, I hope it is not very difficult for you to see, is 1 by root 2 alpha 1 beta 2 minus beta 1 alpha 2, right. So, you expand, this is what you get. What I have done here is I have labeled all the functions in a particular coordinate using the same color and all functions in another particular coordinate in a different color. Now, we are already familiar with matrices because we talked about them while discussing your angular momentum. Now, see not matrices, determinants. Now, when you look at this, do you see that it is very simple to collect the terms in the same atom, sorry, same electron, and write this whole thing in the form of a determinant. Let me do it for you. First of all, in this 1 1 location, we are going to write psi s1 alpha 1. What is that? Psi s1 alpha 1, that is a spin orbital. Then psi s1 alpha 1 is multiplied by psi 1 s2 multiplied by beta by 2. So, the only way you can get it is by incorporating psi 1 s1, sorry, psi 1 s2 beta 2 in the diagonal block of the determinant we are getting, and the other two terms come here. Okay? Simple? Let us get ahead. Alright. So, this is what we have. We have this determinant, and now this is called a Slater determinant. Let us have a closer look at the determinant. What has happened? Look at row number 1. When you go from left to right, what has remained the same? What has changed? But let us do something. Let us break here. We will come back and continue from here in the next module.